Hi, everybody. My name is Margaret Pinard. You're here on my channel, which means you're on Booktube. So, welcome. I'm a historical fiction and a fantasy writer and an eclectic reader. And that is usually how I introduce myself. This is going to be a video more on the reading side or people who are not writers to see if they're curious about writers' experience of reading. Because one of the things you hear about writing is that you should really read a lot to be able to write well. And I think that's pretty true. But does reading become a chore? Does it become awful? Is your reading ruined when you become a professional writer? So I thought we'd have an interesting little discussion about some of these myths, conjectures, ideas that are out in the public and that I've seen swimming around YouTube lately. So I don't know, I thought that would be my author topic today, and feel free to chime in. You can ask questions, you can give your opinions. Any of the above are welcome. So, welcome to the discussion. And if you've got questions, pop them in the chat. That's either during live chat or afterwards. And I've got a few things to flag for your attention. We've got a readathon in February. So I'm going to be doing a live show to announce it on the 21st of January, which is a Sunday. If you want to join the readathon, that means you have a chance to come on the live show and talk about the books you're going to read for February. So if that interests you, let me know. Drop me a line. I've got a message on my community tab if you want to use that to respond. Always good. This week, especially, I've got lots of cool, fun things. AHK. That's Saturday. Let's do the Friday one first in order to stick in people's minds. So AWC Stream Party this Friday at 5 p.m. Pacific. What is this? This is just a bunch of letters. Well, AWC stands for AuthorTube Writing Conference, and that is a very accessible writers conference in June run by Esty Houston and myself. And there are a lot of different people who are going to be giving presentations about writing and publishing. And basically, you can tune in, ask questions, be engaged, meet people. It's great. We've done this for 2 years. And so this time leading up, we're doing a few stream parties or watch parties to keep people's minds, keep it at the front of people's minds so they don't forget. And I will be co-hosting with JD Estrada this Friday on my channel. So we'll both be looking at a previous AWC presentation. To this one, it's going to be Leslie Penelope's talking about story Bibles. So if that is a topic that interests you, tune in. If you didn't get to watch it the first time, watch it with us and we'll go a little deeper. And then we'll get to ask our questions of Leslie at the end. So that's the stream party on Friday evening. And then on Saturday, second Saturday of the month, you know what that means. AHK stands for AuthorTubers Host Karaoke. I had a second where I thought I misspelled the acronym. So Barrett will be joining me on my channel and we'll be doing live karaoke for everyone's madcap pleasure. Bring a song, sing a cappella, doesn't make a difference to us. We just love having people come together and be joyful or get soulful, whichever direction your singing tastes lie. So that is going to be a busy weekend. So yeah. So now let's hop back onto our topic today, which is about the experience of reading for writers. And I'll just welcome the folks in the chat. We've got Eloise Barr, hello, hello, and Anita saying hi, and Jim's Books Reading and Stuff. It's past midnight, so won't be on long, but boop the like button. Thank you, Jim. And Leslie! just responding to Leslie on Instagram. Very nice. And Amy, hey Amy, otherworldly author. Oh, I like the new tag. Hello, hello. So the first thing that I thought I would talk about on this topic, does it ruin reading? Like that's the headline, right? And these are obviously just going to be my personal subjective opinions. As you can probably tell, if you've been following, I read over 100 books a year, so I don't think anyone could say that writing has ruined the process of reading for me. I still engage in it, to the height of my abilities and time permitting. So, not for me, but I will caveat this with it's fiction I'm talking about rather than nonfiction. Nonfiction, of course, for a historical writer is going to be like, give me more, I'll gobble it up, right? Well, in my area, not all things, of course. But I just went through another round of querying a museum for different sort of topics, and they came back with some of the titles that they had. And then I looked in my local library, and then I looked on Internet Archive, and then I asked for interlibrary loan. So I'm doing some research for my book now. There's lots of nonfiction that I'm excited to read, both articles and books. And so that's going to be pretty the same for authors before or after you start writing seriously or, as a professional. So back to nonfiction. Like when you're writing fiction and you have to look at the back end and you have to look at structure and analyze it and get to know the tropes and familiarize yourselves with the gears of what makes fiction work. We all do that to a different degree. Does that sort of spoil the experience of being in the audience and being wowed? Like when you know the magic tricks, is the magic show ruined? Is kind of what I'm approaching this with. And no, not for me. So let's dive into it though. Um, the thing that I think usually prevents a writer from enjoying a writing, there's several like layers here. But one is that you've got different modes of reading and you can't turn one off. So if you're reading for pleasure, you've never gone to the back end of the book, done all that investigating, gotten to know the magic tricks. The mode of reading that you would default to is lay it out for me. I'm just going to take it as it comes, just like a movie, right? You're consuming something and waiting for things to be revealed. Um, and what that might develop into is the voice of a critic. For example, when you self edit, when you go over your own work and you're looking for ways to tighten the language, when you're looking for plot holes, when you're looking for pacing gaps, your inner critic voice is on. And, if there are writers in the audience, you'll probably go, oh, yeah, I know that one. She's my friend. She's not your friend. I mean, yes, she can be. But the inner critic voice as a default mode of reading can be really frustrating because you want to be able to use that critical voice in your head to solve those issues and make your writing better. But you also want to be able to turn it off when you're reading so that you can just let someone else's story wash over you. And so that might be problem number one in terms of people for whom writing seriously and knowing the back end sort of ruins the process of reading. And I'm so, so sorry for those people. It's like, um, yeah, I was afraid of this at one point and um it just didn't materialize for me. So this could be because I read eclectically. So if I was reading the same kind, I might develop more of a, oh, this is going to happen. This is the expectation. Is this being satisfied? And then be more critical. But because I ping all over the place and multiple books at once, I think I sort of keep that at bay. So I hope that continues. Or it might be because I haven't gotten deep enough into the back end, like structure analysis. That's one of the things because it involves graphical interfacing that I just can't get behind. Um, I remember taking I don't know if it wasn't a virtual class, it was an actual convention seminar that I went to, and someone very famous gave a talk about structure, about where to find the inciting incident, where to find the act two turn, all these things. and, then asked us to look at movies and interpret where these different points were because every story has them. And I was like, I don't know. I'm consulting classic movies and it still doesn't make sense to me, like I don't see the pattern. So maybe it's just like one of those seeing eye books, graphical interfacing, whatever, not my thing. So perhaps if that is more your language of like analysis, maybe that will get in the way of reading. If anyone is very good at structural analysis of story, let me know if that is the case. And maybe my thesis or my theory will be proven right in one instance. So turning off the critic, that is my solution and seems to be working. The second point I thought was interesting is that while it doesn't stop me enjoying books and a wide variety of books, it does make me notice certain things. And so this may be in a similar way from structural analysis to the experience of reading being affected. The things that I notice don't change my enjoyment of the story, but they do make me look for certain things. And so a lot of these are on the publishing side. But I thought it might be interesting. If you're a reader that is watching and curious, you might not know about these things, but they might actually be interesting to you as a reader. But they're not usually included when you talk about the story. So things that I noticed that I didn't before I was a writer. Who's the publisher? So I will look straight at the spine and go, okay, whose little icon is on the spine? So I've been paying attention to that because I realized there's certain publishers that publish certain genres, and there's certain publishers whose choices I really like, etc. And so sometimes that's not like on your radar as a reader. The second thing is POD. So because of our glorious 2012-ish Amazon Kindle revolution, we did get used to it's not in this one, turning to the back of a book and seeing if it's print on demand. Now, this used to be the way to tell if it was independently published, if it was self-published. You would turn to the back of the book, for example, a Stygian collection. And if you saw a barcode there with usually made in the USA, Moni, Illinois, and the date, and the barcode with a number, that would tell you that it was provided to a print-on-demand publishing center, and it wasn't published in a printers for a large order. And that told you something back in the day. Things have evolved since then, and even traditionally published books now have the sort of print-on-demand calling card in the back. But that was something I was looking for as soon as I realized it was in my book on the shelf. And now it's like in a lot of places because that's how business has changed since then. So just like an interesting little publishing fact. We also had some new people. We've got Nicole's here. Hello, hello. Eloise says, it totally spoils it for me. I DNF a lot because of it. Also impacts movies. I think she's responding to the structure, like you know what to expect or you know when to expect it. That's a real bummer. I'm sorry, Eloise. Nicole says, every type of art, you'll have to do that in some way or another. Turn off the critic voice, I'm assuming. And I don't know why authors get so upset over it. Yeah, if you can't do it, it would be upsetting because often a love of reading is what brings you to writing. So if now that is spoiled, I could see getting upset over that. As in certain types of art for painting must have XYZ elements or else it doesn't count. Same for script writing, sewing, sculpting, etc. Oh, okay. Maybe you're talking about having the structure rather than seeing it. Okay. Eloise says, I don't get upset, just makes me less surprised at twists. Yeah. Clarifying, I more so meant the people that hate when someone says, I studied my market and I know what the tropes and expectations are, and therefore that means that book isn't art. Well, if the people that hate when someone says da 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 da, and therefore that book isn't art. Well, I wouldn't like to have someone tell me that because there are certain structural expectations, that means that the book isn't art. So I guess I'm in that camp. I don't know. Oh, Nicole says, for example, I switched to first person POV for my urban fantasy mystery because for both those genres, it needed to be in first person. But I had a lot of people say it isn't art anymore because I caved. Yes, I agree with Eloise. That's just rude. Yeah, it's expected for the genre. Okay. That's a very specific case. Okay. And UF is expected. UF. I'm not sure what that means. That's not unreliable. That's not I don't know what that means. MC with awesome powers. Books only have to be enjoyable to read for me. This is Anita. Book time with Ryan. Same in public relations. Hi, Ryan. Hard to get pumped up for speeches. Right. Right. I think I wrote my first like retirement gold watch speech in college as an intern. And I mean, I don't write political speeches, but whenever I hear them, I'm like, well, that's a nice turn of phrase. That's unique. That's original. Okay, that was boilerplate. That sounds like boilerplate. Like, yeah. Amy says, I've noticed the publishers a lot too, but more so when they produce books I like so I can trust them and their authors. Orbit Publishing is one I'm particularly loyal to. That's a good one. Oh, urban fantasy. Okay, I thought you were doing a POV. Okay, thank you. The genre, not the POV. Okay, so publishers and POD. What else do we have that I notice now? Book cover barcodes. So again, front of the book, back of the book. If you look at the back of the book and you see a barcode, sometimes you can look above and it'll say the dollar amount, but usually it's within the barcode here. There's a barcode generator online. There's also a monopoly company that you have to get your identifying numbers from as an author in the US called Bowker that sells these because they trade on people knowing that they don't have to pay for them. And that just made me mad. So I notice if it just says 90000, because that means you did it a certain way, or it has the price in it, which means you did it a different way. Because I'm a dork. I don't know. Seems pretty simple. I can't read barcode. I'm not a robot, obviously, but things I know now, right? Like little mysteries behind the camera. D, so fourth thing is the author's note. So I think I mostly skipped author's notes. Like, meh, I liked the story. I don't have any burning desire to know like when the author thought about it or how long it took. And I think these were less of a thing before I was publishing. So, while it has gone up in popularity, I've started reading them because, especially in historical fiction, I noticed that authors' notes are really useful to readers who are curious about what's real, what's fiction. And so often the author's note is the perfect place for a historical fiction author to provide their readers who are curious with the, well, this really happened, but I had to move it 2 months, or this person really existed, but I gave them a second wife, or something like this. And it just delights me as a reader to read these. And so I definitely read them now, where I don't think I noticed them before, because the entire like before page 1 and after page ending, I was just like, it's just like a table of contents. Why would you read a table of contents? This is fiction, not nonfiction. But I think those have become more important and useful to me as a reader. And so now I write them as well as reading them. So do you read author's notes? I don't know. Give me a clue. Ryan says, I'd love to know why words are in the opposite direction on European book spines. I do not know that. I'm trying to think if there's something else that is related to that that's different. But yeah, my French books are all like, they turn the different way. I think that's just like a publishing convention that just grew up separately, and they're like, "We're not caving. No, no." So, like, yeah, proud of their history and not willing to change. Go French. Nicole says there's lots of chat about writing to market versus art nowadays. And why can't it be both? Especially if, like I said, I only switch the POV for expectations to be met, but people still call it a sellout. Yeah, I think you can still write to market and have it be art. It's creative. Art is just like someone's creation. So, yeah. Nicole says author notes for me are always in the back. Sometimes I'll read them. Amy says, I read the notes for books I particularly liked. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, didn't notice that. It's too funny. Yeah. The other thing that will happen in books in French, at least I know, you won't get the copyright or the year, the publishing information at the front. It's always at the back. Maybe that's related. I don't know. I don't think so. But yeah, I would always look for that and be like, why is it not there? And then by the time I finish, I'd be like, oh, there it is. Weird, weird, weird. Yeah, there's lots of things that are different in the European grammar or publication market. Europeans using single quotes instead of double quotes for dialogue, periods instead of commas for decimal places in different spots. Yeah, things you notice. So besides author notes, there's another thing that I bet not many readers read, but as soon as I started, and I don't do it all the time, but as soon as I started publishing, I did pay more attention to acknowledgments. For one, because they're hard to write, so I would look at how other people wrote them for advice. So acknowledgments are obviously where you would say thank you to the people who helped you on your journey to bring this book to publication. And there's like some tired phrases and things that to me sound like cliches that I always try to not use. And I want to make it short and sweet, but I also want to remember all the people. So usually I'll keep a list of people who have like helped in different ways. And I'll try to keep that with the book research so that it's like all in one place. And then figure out some way to start the acknowledgments, which is always awkward. The cliche one is what's the one I see every once in a while? Basically like I can't possibly thank everyone here, but and I'm like, that's like a wedding toast beginning. Like it need just wait and find something more unique, you know? So acknowledgments. I'm always looking for how other authors like introduce their acknowledgments. It seems hard for me. And so I like to see how other people do it, put a unique spin on it, or like work in humor. So let's see. Continent, not UK. I see it in South American books too. I guess you mean the spines. Yeah, the single quote threw me for a loop when I first came across it, says Eloise. I pay more attention to book blurbs now for similar reasons. They're so hard to write. I know. And Nicole says something that readers don't often get right is word count. Readers. Oh, you mean guessing the word count? Oh, well, yeah. No, not at all. And that's not something I've like changed noticing. I still doesn't even register for me. Ryan says, I read everything except endnotes and nonfiction, and for a few books, notes on the versions used for copies and how errors were handled. Notes on the versions used for copies. I'm not sure what that refers to. How errors were handled. Do they do that in books? I see that in newspapers. I don't see that in books. Okay, now I'm curious. Oh, yeah, they improved this book. Any remaining mistakes are my own. Yes, that is how a lot of people will end. Yeah, and the acknowledgments. Yep. Nicole says, I was talking to my friend about Lord of the Rings word count for Return of the King, and I was so far off. He said it was like 150,000 words total. What? What I remember from the book is that it was smaller than I thought because the book is the same size as the other two, but like half of the paperback is all the appendices. So I felt like I still had a bunch of the book to go when I finished, and I was like, "Oh, that's it." It's just a surprise to me. Okay, Ryan says the Northwestern Newberry Library copies of Herman Melville works goes into which versions were. Oh, I see. Okay, that is usually in like a foreword or a preface. And I do read those. Which versions were truer to manuscripts and where errors came from typesetters or ink issues. Gotcha. Yes. This is when you're a big fan of the work and you really want to know. Yeah, I like it. Um, and Nicole gets 90,000 because she has a pocket copy. Yeah. Um, all right. So acknowledgments. A couple more things. And papers. So let's see if I have a book with pretty end papers. Now, readers, if you don't know what end papers are, here's just a normal book, right? Hardcover. So it's I don't know, you can knock on it is sort of my criterion for hardback. And what you see here is like the paper glued on so that you don't see the glue or like the insides of the book, and it goes across and over, and then you've got your interior. So like, yeah, end papers are the front cover and the back cover, how they wrap around. And cool thing is, I could guess I don't have one here. It has to be a hardcover, doesn't it? I don't think this one's going to be one either. Nope, just regular, just white. But, oh no, wait, I've got my Persephone books here. Okay, so these are paperbacks, but they do a special job with their end papers. And because they're a company that republishes little known or forgotten women's voices, they go back and find illustrations or fabrics or wallpaper patterns from the era where that author wrote, and they make them their end papers. So this is Persephone's book, The Carlyles at Home, which is like mid-19th century. And they took a painting that illustrated the Carlyles at home, complete with carpet detail, and made it their end papers. So it's a little nicer paper. It's clay instead of paper. And you turn it, there's another clay page, and then you get into the paper. So end papers. And I don't think I knew about that, what they were called at least, before I got into writing. So that was like a whole new thing. Again, part of the publishing process and not the analysis of writing, but like a cool thing that doesn't ruin reading for me at all. It's just like a cool thing that I notice. And Persephone Books, again, a great publisher of books like this. And then finally, something that I noticed, especially in edited collections of short works. So I use the Best Science and Nature Writing of 2022 as an example for this, where that was the first time maybe that I noticed that an editor had chosen pieces that had similar structure. And I put this in my review because it was very different. Best Science and Nature Writing means that they had people submit votes for the best, like, few pages essay in different publications and then put them together in a compendium. And so variety of styles, variety of disciplines, different sciences entirely. And they all had a similar feel to them, which is that they started with a really relatable, personal, or like funny, nonsensical sometimes anecdote, and then it drew back to some context, and then it got into a little bit more of the science and like the research. It got a little technical, and then it explained the discoveries that the person had made, and then it wrapped up with like the conclusion of or the solution to the beginning anecdote to keep you involved personally. And I was like, oh, this is so brilliant. It's not something the editor um, told the writers to do, obviously, because it wasn't a submission process. It was a collection and like voting and board voted, I guess, um, procedure. So they went out and found writing like that in very technical fields. So in compiled works, short fiction, I actually noticed a pattern of structure. So I was like, "Go, Margaret." So anyway, so those are some of the things that I've noticed that have actually usually enriched my reading, because I've been writing and publishing for over a decade now. So my next point is what remains mysterious. Um, okay, we've got, oh boy. So yeah, Ryan is, I think, sympathizing with my Return of the King experience. This is like hundreds of pages at the end. Yeah. And then Nicole says, still struggling with Return of the King. It feels so much longer than the other two books, which is funny because I think it's shorter. Nicole says, I'm thinking of doing hardcovers for my books, and then read up on how much extra work they are, and I gave up. Same. I get that feeling for sure. And Lady Jane Books is here. Say hello. Hello. Ryan is reading Madri now, which is a book by Herman Melville. All right. Doing some classics for January. Very nice. Yeah, pretty copy. I think that's the Persephone book. Yeah. They go dove gray on the front so that they can have like the party in the back. Yeah, and Laura is here. Hello, Laura. Persephone books are so pretty. Yes. Yeah, if I had another day, I would go visit them in Bath. Bath? Bath. Because their shop is like cute as a button as well. Ryan says some of the coolest extra detail I've seen in a book is from S. The book is called Ship of Theseus. I think that's what you mean. Which was pretty hard to review. Oh, okay. Nicole says, I'm now a mystery writer and I still cannot figure out the ending to most mystery novels, so I'm always happily shocked. Oh, this is what I'm going to go into next. What remains mysterious? Oh, not Mardi, like Tuesday. Yes, okay. So what remains mysterious? And on the thumbnail, I said, is everything obvious? Is one of my questions, because this person, this writer who analyzes structure and knows who done it from like a third of the way through, that is not me. That is not me. In fact, I went over this, I think at the year-end book tag. I have been rereading Laurie R. King's books. She writes the Russell Holmes mysteries, among other standalones. And the books are so well written. And I think I went like 7 or 8 years not reading any, and then sort of like caught up and read some new ones, and then went back and reread. And the ones that I reread, I can't remember if like I could tell at any point, but I definitely couldn't guess the perpetrator or the mystery. Like, nope, out of my head. Like, I've said this before. My short-term memory is really good, but it only lasts about a week and then it drops off and everything is like just cleaned up. So books, mysteries, things that aren't deemed essential life details to this brain is like out the window. And so I can enjoy a mystery again because goldfish brain. Yeah. So that's a separate point from being able to guess stories you have not read, but I'm just putting it out there. Let's see. What drove the writer to connect with this character? Ooh, character wound. Okay. So some of the things that like maybe readers think writers can do when they read, but are still mysteries to me. What drove the writer to connect with this character wound? So these would be really interesting questions, and you might find me asking authors during interviews in the future. But like part of the really great part of reading is when I'm reading and like this character is really well drawn and fleshed out, and they have a wound that drives them onto whatever adventure they're on, whether it's mystery or fantasy or literary adventure. And oftentimes I will think about the author and like how they came to making that their choice. Like, this is what I'm going to write about. Because when I'm at that point in a new book and I think, oh, I've got 60 different directions I want to go in, what is going to be the most powerful for me to connect with, to be able to write about in a really impassioned way? And I have no idea how that happens for other people on the other side. So that is a really curious mystery for me, that is no more, um, that is still opaque, we'll say. That is no more transparent than before I started writing and publishing myself. Another one that remains mysterious. How do they devise these twisted motivations for murder? So I just produced an interview with Crime Time on A Mighty Blaze yesterday with Tess Gerritsen. And one of the reviewers for her said something like, I can't imagine how she gets into these twisted characters' minds, because she's done a lot of murder mysteries, and like it's been made into a TV series, etc. So very exciting, very propulsive. But like sometimes I will read a book, and sometimes I'll even reflect about it afterwards, how like the disconnect between authors who seem sane and characters who do insane things. Like, how did they think these up? Did they read it in a news bulletin? Did they see it on Dateline? Maybe. Like how do these like evil thoughts come to them? And yeah, motivations for murder. So that's always something that I'm like, I don't know. When I get weird ideas like that, I think, oh, that could be good for a book, but I don't write it down. I don't develop into anything, because that is not a strong enough kernel for me to pursue. So that remains mysterious to me for people who write like heavier, like horror or thriller books. That is very, very mysterious. We had Laura come in and say hello, Laura Nettles and JC Carpenter. Hello, JC. To answer the question in the title, no, writing does not ruin reading. Good. That's the same answer for me. Laura says, I oscillate between months of reading and months of writing. Both are important. Yes. Oh, I have a poll. I'll get to the poll in a second and conclude that. But yeah, I read every month. I read sometimes more, sometimes less, but I write in certain like months. Yeah, definitely months go by without writing. Same thing. I think I said that right. Ryan says, I love not knowing until the end. Right. Because otherwise, like there's no tension, there's no excitement. I agree. Nicole says, you can go so many ways for mysteries, even with hitting all mystery tropes and expectations. So how am I truly supposed to know? I'm in for the ride. I like it. And Ryan says, I think trying to guess becomes a game theory exercise, like what's being added to confuse or misdirect. That's a really good point. Yeah. Yeah. If you're reading something, I wonder if you connect that back to the author and go, ooh, from their previous books or from their, demeanor, personality, experience, what do you think they would put in as misdirection? That's fun. Victoria talks writing. Hey, Victoria. And there we go. I had 2 more points on this, but let me close the poll first before I forget that I said I would do that. We got 62% for both can't choose. And we had reading 23, writing 15. All right. I think I would definitely say reading is more important. Yeah. It's on a different sort of scale. It's a hard question to answer. I'm sorry. I apologize for putting that in a poll. I thought it would be quippy, but no. Okay, so point number 4, what becomes even better or more enjoyable for a person who writes when they read? So, here are my like little fun asides. I really enjoy looking at the subtle cues. So if someone says something and they have a tone, or there's a beat of silence, or there's like a glance at something that is significant, like a house or a person, and you're like, I sense a connection. You sort of get to ride the wave of possibilities and shadows rather than being told everything. And I love that. I really enjoy that. Um, this sort of rolls into foreshadowing. Um, yeah. It can be narration, it can be, like, the flattest sentence in the world, but if the way it connects is sort of making your spidey sense tingle, then you have foreshadowing, and that seems extra exciting to me when I read it as a writer because I feel like I'm in the presence of magic, because I can feel someone else's work feeling effortless to me, the consumer of the work. It's beautiful. And one book that really does those well, to me, would be Babel by R.F. Kuang. So, this is one that I eventually want to go back and reread because as I was going along, there was a lot I wasn't picking up. And then as I started to see where it was headed, finally, like in 2/3 through, I was like, "Oh, but that oh, and then that. Ooh, okay." So I know there are lots of smaller things. I just repeated that, yes. That I would look at differently going through again now that I know what I know. So that is really enjoyable. The iceberg research, and by that, you could probably tell what I mean. The little bit of factual, especially in historical settings, uh, background that the author drops in is like the sliver of the 7/8 of the iceberg is under the surface type philosophy, meaning that when you see someone drop in something about a belt or a petticoat or a hat, and you're a writer, you know that was probably at least 3 hours of research to determine what hats were popular in that area, in that year, what was available to them with their budget, and, what's different from the people who are in the scene that would be noticed, and what would a certain color say about their religious views or class background. Like there's a lot that goes into fashion, I'll just say that. And a person who does this beautifully is Mimi Matthews. So she's one of my favorite comfort reads, historical romance. Mimi Matthews, amazing. She has a nonfiction blog where she's gone through a lot of her research and like made it into basically essays about the research that she's done on things like fashion, things like travel times, things like class distinctions, things like laundry and how people did it, and like servants and meal times and how they consumed food and what their schedules were like. Just a font of information. And she specializes in, I think, 2 main, maybe 3 main decades in the 19th century. So, they can be very different. And when you know that some author has done all that work to drop in one true thing that colors the scene beautifully, oh, God, well done. I can tell that there's a lot of work behind that. Like your research muscles are showing, but like not all the dross that doesn't need to be there for the casual reader. So that's like chef's kiss. I always appreciate that um, when I see it. We've got, we've got Victoria says, I feel like I can read for a few minutes when I have some spare time, but I can only write if I have a lot of time at once. Oh, for sure. I like that answer. JC says, I think they're equal for me. Writing is like breathing, but I absolutely believe that the more you read, the better writer it makes you. Yeah. So it's sort of measuring different things. It's a hard question. I already apologized for posing it. I voted writing, but I meant to click both, says Laura. Bamps in to hug chat. Hello, Rachel Morley. and Vanessa G. Hello, hello. She's waving to the chat. D. Blair Gold was here for a bit. Enjoyed the discussions. Bye for now. Thank you, D. And Rachel says, I don't know, Margaret, because when it comes to horses and hunting, not always, but a lot for me to notice and be bothered. It reads like zero research was done. Ooh, okay. So we've got a hobby horse of research for Rachel. And yes, that was a completely intended pun. I hope you enjoyed it. Interesting. So yeah, that's sort of the antithesis view. Things that you notice and become less enjoyable are when historical details are wrong, or niche sort of details of things that the average person would not know are wrong. And that can be really grating. Yes, I agree. I didn't do a category in that because I was trying to stay positive, but yeah, grammar will take me out, and factual inaccuracies and like very casually thrown out modern language, that will take me out as well. JC says, oh, that's nice. Can you link her website? I would love to see that research. There it is. It's the very complicated mimimatthews.com/blog. Pop it in the chat for you. It's just like acres and acres. And I think she did all this stuff and put it up on the blog before she published, or as she was just beginning to publish. And now I think she doesn't do the nonfiction as much because she's focused on the fiction writing. Vanessa says Marie Brennan does that too, specifically with folklore on her Patreon. I love reading her stuff. That name sounds familiar, but not for a while. So nice. Thank you for the tip. Richard Holiday is here. Hello, Richard. Puns always appreciated. Yeah. Got the plug. Nicole says, that was a point I made in A Patriot's Tale. Lily, my main character, uses a slingshot to kill small game and handmade traps. Got that from my dad. Vanessa says, I get that frustration with TV when they're talking about writers, authors, publishing. Like, no, we don't get a private jet for book tours that span the world. Yes. Okay. And here, I put this on Facebook like a month ago. It was really funny. So, A Merry Scottish Christmas. I'm into Hallmark Christmas movies. I was down for something, especially Scottish version, right? But like when it's a duke and when it's always a duke and like there's 5, I'm just like, no. But for Brooke Shields and Carrie Elwes in A Castle for Christmas, I was willing to like throw everything out the window just because it was so cute. And like she was representing a very successful author. And I think other than the fact that she was doing no writing and she was burnt out, I think that they did a good job representing that slice of the market. They weren't trying to represent us here. Like, yeah. So if she can buy a castle, she's probably very successful, right? She's on the Drew Barrymore show in that movie. She's successful. Rachel says, I don't mind the modern language so much because can I actually prove they didn't talk like that in the 5th age in the land of Zorthlumpergerg? Well, maybe not in that time and place, but like 1840s Britain, I can probably say someone's not going to say, I don't care. What's your problem? Things like that. So yeah. All right, so back to the positives. Iceberg research. We've got humor in a character's voice. So I love hearing a writer who has sharpened a character's voice to the point where they don't need a dialogue tag. I can tell who's talking because of the aggression or the slang or the pauses or what have you, and especially the humor when I get to know like different characters by their humor, like that's just a sweet moment. So I really appreciate that. And I would say that that requires a certain deft educational legerdemain. I just saw that word recently and I wanted to use it in a sentence. So I had it here. I had to say it. Um Oh no, I know what I meant for this one. So the example that I had for this was The Sign for Home. If you don't remember, that is an audiobook that I reviewed. It's about a deaf-blind protagonist and his um, interpreter protagonist, and they have dueling POVs. And by deft educational legerdemain, what I mean is a lot of that book had to do some heavy lifting, but they made it look really easy. And as a writer on the back end, I can see, okay, I did not know this about deaf people. I did not know this about the ADA. I did not know this about accessibility rules in colleges. I did not know this about fundamentalist religions, like all these things that are educational background. And it was wound into either Arlo's POV as the deaf-blind character or the interpreters as the indignant interpreter learning what the, issues are. And so I was both positioned in a way to see from the author's point of view if it was a positive or a negative thing that was going on, as well as just like given the education, very deft, very like expertly done. And that is by Blair Fell, The Sign for Home, if you're curious. But that is something that I really appreciate. As a historical writer, when I have to do info dumps and like make them smooth and as small as possible for readers to be able to flow right through, I know that can be hard. And so that's like when I see it and I barely feel it, when it's like a graceful breeze drifting past my cheek, I'm very appreciative and I go, wow, well done, Blair Fell. So that's something that's changed since I've become a writer. And then I think the final point that I had, which is good because we're running out of time on this hour, was advice for reading. So if you are an avid reader, you love to read, and you're starting to write and you're worried that focusing on all the mechanics of writing will affect how you read. Um, Number one, there's turning off the critic. There's practice doing that. But there's also what I try to do in my eclectic reading, balancing the familiar with the unfamiliar. That would be my advice. So for me, familiar would be historical romance, for example. And unfamiliar would be literary fiction or nonfiction in a style or voice that I am not used to. Or what else is on my Climathon stack here? Um, Science. So like science articles and research or different points of view, like readathons that I've talked about here before, and Digithon, or things involving, I don't know, chefs or Black Author Tuber readathon, which is coming up and I just posted about. So balancing the familiar and the unfamiliar or unknown will keep you noticing things, but hopefully not seeing too much of a formula so that you get tired of um, the expectations, the tropes, the sameness, and, still give you varied reading, things you like and things that you didn't know you would like, or things you go, oh, okay, I tried that. Not for me, you know? So yeah, that would be my advice. And if you do have trouble with that critic voice, what I put down in my notes was follow your interests. So it's kind of like a cycle. If you have too much of the critic because you're feeling like you're self-editing, um, I would just say follow your interests. If, you're interested in seaweed, pick up a book on seaweed. Go where your interest is and hopefully like the initial it's kind of like relationships, the initial heat will like carry you through the rest of the book. I don't know. I'm not very qualified to use that metaphor, but that's okay. That's my advice for reading as a writer. Rachel is here. RK Stumbling Bear popping in to hit the like button. Since I think you're near your end, I'm going to start from the beginning. Sounds good. Rachel says, true and history-based, it'd probably irk me. Right, closer history at least, because we have more to compare to, yeah. Rachel's making fun of my fancy word for the day. Deft mentioned. Got it. Let me put it in here. It makes sense to me because it's from the French, léger de main. I think it means lightness of hand. So like, like a magician would do. You just sort of and like your napkin is a swan. That's kind of what I'm going for with that phrase. But yes. Any questions? I think I got the one or two questions that came through at the end there. But otherwise, just to remind everyone, if you're enjoying this stream, like and maybe leave a comment afterwards and subscribe to the channel. What we have coming up is Friday, a AWC watch party with JD Estrada, where we'll be watching an AWC presentation on story Bibles and just like chatting about it and what our experience is with that, and then having Leslie on to answer any bonus questions. Saturday, we have AuthorTubers host karaoke, and that will be Barrett on my channel this time. We've got a theme. It's going to be reinvention because we need some like invigoration here in this January, I don't know, snow dump. And then the last public notice is about Black AuthorTuber Readathon. I've got a message up on my community board. If you're interested in reading our fellow Black AuthorTubers books, get your name on the spreadsheet. Let me know if you want to be on the announcement stream Sunday, January 21st. And hopefully we'll get a great crew together to pump up our fellow authors' channels and books and get some reviews flowing. So positive vibes for the start of 2024. I appreciate everyone who's come by to watch today. And Vanessa has a question. To keep a Google Calendar or anything of what's happening on your YouTube. I keep a desktop calendar, like one of these big, like paper with a cardboard back calendar. And I use that to keep me in the next like 3 to 4 weeks. In terms of online on the YouTube channel, I usually have 1 to 2 upcoming streams on and visible and public for everybody. But normally I will be here Sundays at noon Pacific, Wednesdays at noon Pacific, first Fridays and final Fridays for productivity sprints, and various Friday evenings for collaborations such as those that I just mentioned, and Saturdays for karaoke. So hopefully that does help you because it is a pretty regular schedule. So I hope to see you guys soon. I hope you're happily reading something this week, and I will wish you happy reading whatever that is. Feel free to drop it in the comments. Thanks, guys.